All right, we are all set. What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Underground Sports Philadelphia, episode number 422. It's KB and Matt coming at you from Underground Studios. We got a lot to dive into across the three teams that actually are active and or give a damn about winning. Plus, we're going to get into our obvious buffs and snuffs Survivor segment at the end of the show for the real ones. If this is your first time watching the show, because we now are on YouTube, welcome in to Underground Sports Philadelphia. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the like button, bell icon, comment down below, be a friend, tell a friend about the YouTube channel. All you got to do is search Underground Sports Philadelphia on YouTube and you'll find the channel. Follow us on the socials as well, at Underground PHI on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Matt on Twitter, at Matt Castorina. You can follow me at KBIZZL311. Check out the website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com, for all of our written content, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us those 5-star ratings and reviews. We're still cooking in Armenia, Matt. They're still loving the show.
Good to hear.
And of course, like I said, subscribe to the YouTube channel and help us, build that presence over on YouTube. Big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen: Main Auto LLC, Ducharme's Pro Foot, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, Mark Ronchetti CPA LLC, and the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland, and of course Tomahawk Shades, the best small batch eyewear in the game. You guys can go to tomahawkshades.com and use promo code USP for 25% off your entire order at tomahawkshades.com. The official sponsor and partner of the NL East Run Differential, which we'll get into, our pals over at Pickup. Go to playpickup.com, start building up your fan profile, get points for getting props correct. It's free to play. Anybody can play, and cash them in for prizes on the Pickup Marketplace. That's playpickup.com. And Kenwood Beer. Go to kenwoodbeer.com and use the Kenny tracker to see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap in the Philadelphia area. You got to be 21 or older to do so. And, of course, please drink responsibly. What's going on, Matt?
Living the dream.
We are indeed. Let's kick things off with the most on-brand 420 win of all time. The Phillies win 6-9 in Denver, Colorado on 420.
Bringing legal weed home with them.
Just incredible stuff. Nick Castellanos goes deep. Alec Bohm goes deep. A very on-brand game for this podcast. And then, of course, Johan Camargo seals the deal with a 3-run home run to end it all. But the Phillies do lose the series in Colorado because that's exactly what they do. They are now 10-22 in Colorado for their last 32 games. They have not had a winning season in Colorado since 2012. And I don't know which one's worse, their curse against the Marlins or this unbeaten path against the Rockies.
It's the Marlins because that, I think, disrupts the Phillies the most. The Rockies is just frustrating. The Marlins is soul-crushing.
Yes.
Castiano's obviously hit a home run today, and right at the same time, the Utah Jazz tweeted, we're saddened by the news that Freeman Williams, former Utah Jazzman, has passed away at the age of 65.
He strikes again.
I mean, truly, just a harbinger.
I'm ready to call him Dr. Doom.
It's uncanny. There's a soccer player, Aaron Ramsey, who every time he scored, a celebrity died.
Oh my God.
So he is like the transatlantic Aaron Ramsey. And that, like, every time Aaron Ramsey scored, a celebrity died that day. It's unreal. So we have that.
We got that going for us. I went through this on the last episode, which is now up on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. The Phillies have literally flip-flopped and swapped winning and losing records with the Marlins over the course of decades. So the Marlins came into inception the year we were born. And in the 90s, the Phillies had a winning record against the Marlins. In the 2000s, oddly enough, losing record. The 2010s, they absolutely dominated them and did not finish a single year without 10 or more wins. And now in the Joe Girardi era, because that is all of the 2020s, they are well below 500. And the Phillies are off to just a disappointing start to this season overall now after this 7-game road trip against the Marlins and Rockies that they should have been able to dominate knowing what they have on paper, but the pitching, it kind of came to a head in that Marlins series.
Ooh, who could have predicted that?
And oddly enough, it was the starting pitching. And then the offense just continues to. I mean, today obviously 9 runs, but it has been
Colorado.
so inconsistent.
Like playing with the sliders, boosted up a little bit. Concerning is the right word because the Mets and Marlins series both could have been sweeps. Yes. I mean, and many of those games the Phillies were not good in at all. I mean, we're like thoroughly outplayed and at times whitewashed. There was a time on Easter Sunday where it seemed like the Phillies could have gone down like 12-13-0. And that was on a Zach Wheeler day. And that was just like incredibly efficient hitting from the Marlins. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of that you want to like lay at Wheeler's feet, but it is a troubling trend of like the Phillies starting pitching not being as good as you'd like them to be and not getting consistent run out of the bats either. You've had nice days from them so far, but not nearly at the rate that you'd hope for, at least at this stage of the season. And yeah, still like the starting pitching has had some unfortunate outings. I don't know if that's like truly what this team is going to be. But no relief pitcher still for me is like, trust this guy with my life. I still worry about that end too. And yeah, that's the frustrating aspect is you find yourself just worrying a lot about this team more than you would hope you'd be worrying about that in this stage of the season. And
we should have banked on Jerry's Familia being the first reliever to blow a save because he's just a plant from the New York Mets, but
it's worked out for us pretty well, have to say. Usually arms from the Mets have worked out pretty nice for us. So,
but to only score in 2 games combined 6 runs in the first 2 games of this series against the Rockies, like you said, in Colorado, it's just inexcusable. Especially the game where you score 1 run. It just doesn't make any logical sense to why you have all these guys who can hit. And something I saw on Twitter is like the Phillies are just like swinging away and they're not taking pitches, which fortunately enough for something like that in baseball that can be fixed. But the fact that they're just like allowing themselves to hack away early and get down in counts that are forcing pitchers to be able to kind of just do whatever they want against them is a big issue for this offense. And I think another thing is Joe Girardi just is throwing out different lineups every single day. There's no consistency, and it's not letting guys get comfortable to where they're accustomed to hitting.
Yeah, I think part of that, too, is trying to find what lineup is best as well because you're still so early in the season. I'll say this. A few of these good offensive performances have come without DD.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
He's been pretty bad.
Comfortably the worst starter. Like, there are a few rotational guys that have not been very good, but anyone that you would expect to, like, ring off like the names on like the starting sheet, Didi has been a tier or several below those guys. And I just can't help but feel that that's not a coincidence that today's explosion comes without him. Camargo, by the way,
has been fantastic.
Not a name either that was really on my mind coming into the year as someone that was going to be like a difference maker.
He was supposed to kind of be that utility bench guy.
He's been hot to start. We've had guys like this. Everyone remembers Bamboo Brad, similar type of ilk, but hopefully he has staying power. And Bohm's been good too to start the season. Defensively, still issues, but if he hits like this, I mean, shit. Like
that's what the DH is for.
That's why you got the DH, baby. Like, let him have it.
Like, good grief.
Yeah. So
at one point he was hitting like 700.
Yeah,
and that's not an exaggeration.
No, yeah, he was. He's on like Barry Bonds pace, but yeah, he's looked good at least, and that's a bright spot for the Phillies. There are like those bright spots, and I think too this has been a team that historically has started out hot and is disappointed. Maybe they're reversing that trend, right? Where normally it's like looking good all through April, and then like Memorial Day is where it takes a sour turn. Maybe this year it's going to look bad up until Memorial Day, and then it'll take a positive turn. That's what I'm hoping.
Something tells me they're just doing this to make sure the Sixers have all the full-fledged support in the first round of the playoffs. Because like Bohm is just on fire, which is very great for our standings as a podcast because we put a lot of eggs into the Alec Bohm basket, and to see him hit, and it's all stemmed from the moment where he said, "I fucking hate this place."
Yeah. Turns out when we gave him that standing ovation, we granted him the release that he needed. So There we go. Exercise some demons.
Like, he's hitting 471 this year.
That's pretty good.
I'd say so. Slugging 588, an over 1,000 OPS.
To put that into context, over 1,000 OPS for a season is like that's like one of the top 10 best seasons ever.
Yeah.
Not that that's going to sustain, right? But like that would be truly one of like, and half of that list is Barry Bonds. The other half are like guys from the 50s. Like,
Yeah.
It's like Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds. I think there's a Mike Trout year in there maybe, but.
And then the rest of them are like Reginald Fitzgerald.
Jazz, Spokane, Washington. Like
Burgermeister, Meisterburger.
Dick Havlet or something. Like just dumb names like that. But yeah, I mean, it's not what you would hope for the Phillies. The big concern, like I said, is that in the Mets and Marlins series, because that's where like obviously the bulk of your season is in divisional play. That Mets series was frankly, I mean, like we said, outside of that collapse in the second game, you know, you're getting swept in that series, and I did not think they looked good for 98% of that Marlins series.
No. It was the one game that, you know, ironically enough, was not on TV.
Right. That was impossible to watch, which also coincided with the Sixers game one. So
yes.
Really nobody
had to have the Flyers on
Well, it's
TV.
funny because I was at a like get together, and there was another person there that was like into Philly sports. So we were like watching the Sixers game. He's like, "Well, let's throw on the Philly," because it was like I think like in between quarters.
Yeah.
Trying to find the Phillies game, impossible. Turns out you could only access it if you had Bally's Central Florida Sports or something, South Florida Sports,
the My Teams app,
or the My Teams app, or MLB Extra Innings. And it's like, well, I'm just not watching the Phillies today. All right, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, like the offense has been so
very inconsistent,
to say the least.
Yes.
I mean, you had those two games where they looked really good. Like even the game we were at against the A's, like they only scored 4 runs, but like it felt like they were like consistently like hitting and like working counts and stuff. And then it's all been like so hit or miss from there. And like the lopsided losses are the things that I think are so frustrating because it was billed for this team. Like, yeah, we're just gonna go out hit everybody, and they have been doing the exact opposite of that. Like to this early in the season have a 9-6 loss to the Mets, a 7-1 loss to the Marlins, an 11-3 loss to the Marlins. And then yesterday, I mean, you kind of blame a little on the umpire in that game on Tuesday night. I don't know if you saw this. Sir Anthony Dominguez effectively struck out Charlie Blackmon.
Yeah.
Which, again, dates back to just the umpires this year being pretty bad to start the season. And that's kind of what cost the Phillies the game, because then Chris Bryant gets a bloop infield hit, and then boom, CJ Cron sends one to the moon off of Jerry's Familia. But Phillies are 5-8 now in the standings, theoretically in last place just because they've played so many games. You just got to win these division games. Like we've said it time and time again for the last 4 years. Win the division games. That's what's most important, and they just continue to falter against the Mets on paper and so far this year have been a very good team, but like the Marlins are nobody. I could name like 4 guys on the Marlins roster right now, and then you should have been able to beat the Rockies in 2 out of 3.
Yes.
It's that simple.
There's really nothing more to add. Like that is the root. And I mean, not getting much easier because you have the Brewers.
At least you come home, which is nice. You get the Brewers for 3. Andrew McCutchen, I'm sure we'll get a nice ovation Friday night for his first game.
I'm sure
back.
that great starting pitching by the Brewers too is going to settle on real nice.
Destroy us. And then the Rockies come in, and then you finish the month of April against the Mets. Fun times.
It's tough being under 500 this time of year, and by a not so insignificant margin.
It is tough, and what's even more tough is looking at the NL East run differential, which is brought to you by our pals over at Pickup. You guys can go to playpickup.com and play along all season with myself and Matt and everybody else with the NL East run differentials, the best and the worst for the month of April and every month following this month. And then for the entire season-long stretch, you can also place a prop on who will have the best and worst run differential in the NL East. It's playpickup.com. It's the best place to play the hottest headlines in sports. You build up your fan profiles, cash your points in for prizes. It's free to play, and anybody can play. So go to playpickup.com now and start playing those headlines. This NL East is just a dreck right now. It is so bad. The New York Mets leading the way at plus 29, and they are the only team with a positive run differential. The Phillies and Nationals both at minus 10. The Miami Marlins at minus 2. And the defending champs, quote unquote, minus 14.
At least we're not the Reds with a minus 31 run differential. That's tough to do after 12 games.
Arizona's at minus 26.
Arizona has only scored 22 runs this year. Admittedly, they've played a few less games. They're only on 11 games. But
did beat the Mets.
22 runs.
They're the only team in the NL West with a negative run differential, too.
NL West is tough, man. Yeah, the Marlins, same as last year, where their run differential is hilarious because they don't score very much unless they play the Phillies.
Yes.
By the way, I think like 70% of their runs scored this year came against the Phillies in that series. But then they just don't give up much either because they do have good starting pitching. So yeah, it's funny. They're gonna finish, I don't know, like high 70s wins, low like mid 70s somewhere, and probably have like a negative 20 run differential, something stupid, like something pretty respectable in the end, like
absolutely insane.
Yeah, really, I think just what it is, the NL East is not looking. It's kind of funny though because it hasn't looked good really any of the last few years, but it's produced 2 World Series winners, 2 of the last 3, so makes sense.
Every
of that.
time I see that, I just get more and more confused as to how, especially the stupid Nationals.
It's something about the Mid-Atlantic. I don't know what it is.
And they were showing on Sunday Night Baseball, which, fun enough, the Phillies back-to-back Sundays. This coming Sunday and the following will be on Sunday Night Baseball. Bryce Harper will be mic'd up this Sunday. And they were showing like the records versus the worst teams in 2022. And every team from like 2017 to 2020 was like in the top 6. And they showed the Braves, who finished 13th.
It's stupid.
And whoever the announcer was goes, well, yeah, they only won 88 games last year, so it makes sense that they'd be in this position.
What a dumb division. What a dumb division we play in. I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about how they might realign some of the divisions and stuff, because it was interesting because like they were talking about how there's no functional difference anymore between NL and AL because the designated hitter was really the last thing that was of any actual difference.
Right.
And they were talking about how that might lead to like some reshuffling and like, we've had teams switch between leagues and stuff. But now that it means nothing competitively, that could open that pathway. And I want to say someone suggested that it was like a Red Sox, Yankees, Mets, Phillies division. I was like, I'd stop watching baseball.
That's horrendous.
I was like, I think I'd stop watching baseball if that happened. I think my heart couldn't take it. I couldn't take the Yankees fans.
No.
I couldn't take the Red Sox fans.
Not at all.
And I sure would not love to be lumped in with the Mets.
God.
That is like...
That's nightmare fuel.
You had the Cardinals to that? That's like...
You want me to stop watching baseball?
That's like the Sinister Six.
Yeah, throw them, the San Francisco Giants in there.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah.
So the Eastern Atlantic Division introducing the San Francisco Giants.
They were formerly the New York Giants, so we thought it made sense.
Yeah. God
That's
almighty.
awful. So were they basically saying like 4 teams each?
So yeah,
division?
it was the Athletics baseball show, and Ken Rosenthal was talking about it. He seemed like I don't want to say pretty certain, but he seemed like more than just like, I think this might happen, more to like, it's probably going to happen one day, like sooner than you realize.
Especially if
that
they
you're
do
gonna
this
get
whole
really...
expansion.
Right. He
thing
said
that's planned with
he was saying
Nashville.
that there's going to be 2 teams added, and that could be when that realignment maybe happens. I don't know if it'll be something like that, but he said it does make sense to maybe shuffle things around a little bit and figure
because
it
the
out.
teams that
I can't imagine the Mets and Yankees being in the same division though. Like they love anytime there's
they build that up.
A 2 city, 2 sports city, they always split them, conference wise, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think the only one that's Or no, yeah, because it's the Dodgers and Angels are NL, Royals and Cardinals, Mets, Yankees, Nationals, Orioles. Because those are the ones that they kind of like, oh, it's this series.
Yeah.
And then they do nothing for the Phillies and Pirates because the Pirates are a fake organization.
You don't like the Keystone rivalry? What a terrible name for a rivalry.
How are the Pirates looking? Can they start losing more games?
They're doing their best. Believe me.
Still somehow not in last place, though.
Because of the Reds.
Yeah.
Reds in their minus 31 run differential.
I got the futures ticket on the Pirates to be the worst team in baseball.
Yeah, well, should have been one of the Diamondbacks, I guess.
Once they trade Brian Reynolds, it'll be much better for me.
Rangers, surprisingly, 2-8. That's tough.
That's very surprising, especially
They
after all the moves
so much
they made.
All that, yeah. Orioles were like the favorite, right?
Yeah, it was Orioles, Pirates, Diamondbacks, and then Reds and Nationals tied.
Nationals not having a bad start to the season. Good for let me stop that sentence, but not so much.
Not so much.
Baseball, you gotta love it.
You gotta love it. We're gonna dive into the Sixers now, but stick around because we're gonna announce our winner of our Nick Castellanos jersey giveaway later on in the show. But let's dive into those 76ers heading up to the 6 without Matisse Thybulle, obviously. Up 2-0, which is everything and more that you could ask for. You took care of home court advantage in convincing fashion both games, and Nick Nurse might just be one of the most annoying coaches of all time. And Raptors fans are quickly climbing up my rankings of goofiest fan base of all time because these tweets that they're getting off are ludicrous.
Yeah, the diaper filling that is happening in Toronto is unreal. Normally you have to wait. We were talking about how the NHL is going so late this season, and normally you have to wait till the Leafs get swept in round 1 to get this kind of stuff from Toronto fans. But I guess they have nothing else to pretend to care about. It is weird. I've really never seen anything like it. The last time, funnily enough, was like the Harden Rockets. People hated on him so much. What's funny though is
I hate to interrupt, Matt. We have breaking news from John Rothstein.
Uh-oh.
Jay Wright is expected to step down at Villanova.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, there's a scandal incoming, clearly. I'm sorry, but
Daryl?
I'm sorry, but that can only mean one thing. That there's no way he's just like voluntarily stepping down. Unless it's like a health thing, family thing, something like that. Those are like the three things. Health, family, or he was the bag man and he got caught.
Holy shit.
That's
news you never expected to hear.
Voluntarily stepping down is interesting wording for that, is all I'll say. That's an interesting way to say it.
Fordham's Kyle Neptune is expected to be Jay Wright's successor at Villanova.
Never heard of him. That's shocking.
Holy shit.
That is shocking stuff.
There's always some sort of breaking news on this fucking podcast.
That's the way it goes. Castiano said home run today.
That's true. There it is.
It wasn't the Jazz Man. It was
wow.
It was one of the Wright brothers.
Doc, your days are numbered.
God willing.
That has to be something, right?
I'm telling you that there's voluntarily stepping down sounds. Sinister isn't the right word, but it sounds like someone's like, hey, like he's voluntarily stepping down. He's not fired.
Unless it's
not what it looks like.
Which we hope it's not health related.
Right.
Like unless it's something with health or something like that.
But
because Jay Wright has been one of those guys that has been at the forefront of like, no, I love it here at Villanova.
Yeah, when a few years ago when like the Sixers were interested in like at least rumored to be interested.
That is insane.
People were all about him and
yeah, it was like right after the bubble playoffs.
That's so strange. Not a particularly old coach either. Like it's not like whatever. Maybe he just wants to be with family. Fair enough. I just I don't know.
I mean,
Weird. He's
I would
60. Holy shit. I did not realize he was 60.
looks great for 60.
Jesus.
I'd take Jay Wright in a heartbeat if Doc goes to LA.
Wow. Well, shall we talk about the other basketball team that plays at Wells Fargo? The interesting thing about the Raptors stuff and the fans is that, the fouls, I don't know. I haven't seen any of it this year with the fouls on the Sixers and felt like they were getting calls, phantom calls. I know Harden in the past has been able, and I think there's been a few of those in this series, and since he became a Sixer, I was like, yeah, I could see how, if I was, and I can remember what it was like to watch Harden play, but I would have been a little pissed off with that. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. The Embiid stuff is unbelievable to me.
Yes.
He's constantly fouled. In fact, he probably doesn't get enough foul calls. If you can, I'm sorry, but a guy who's that quick, that mobile, and that good at that size is just gonna get fouled, because especially when you don't have size on your team like the Raptors, if they have good size but not known close to matching up with Embiid, they can't handle him. Yes, he gets fouled a lot. Sorry. It's weird though, because Ja Morant has 24 free throw attempts in these playoffs, playing almost 10 minutes less than Embiid too. Not a word about Ja Morant and how ridiculous that is. Spencer Dinwiddie has 5 less free throw attempts these playoffs. Spencer Dinwiddie.
That's crazy.
No one's filling their diaper about that.
They also weren't complaining when Hack-a-Ben was a thing.
Right, that's the thing too, is when it's a player that can't make free throws and people hack them, it's like, you just go make your free throws. It's well, don't foul him. Right. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what other advice to give other than just to not foul him. It's amazing because it is kind of overblown, some of this, about this hysteria about the, and it's crazy too because the foul differential is not even that crazy either.
No.
For the series, it's 14. The Raptors have committed 50 fouls. The Sixers have committed 36. That's 14. It's through 2 games. What, roughly 7 each game difference? That's not that crazy.
No.
That's really not. I don't get it. I don't get the hysteria about how the Sixers are stealing this. Also, you were boat raced both games.
Yes.
It's not like this was a close game and you could make the argument that, lost by 5 if some of those foul calls go our way. It's a different game. No, you were down by 30 in both of these games. I'm sorry. Yeah, it sucks that Scotty Barnes got hurt in the first game and Trent Jr. was sick to start and Thad Young hasn't been sorry that all those things happened. It's not your fault and it sucks, but you were well beat outside of the free throws.
Destroyed.
And what's funny too is I was reading the NBA.com article, by the way. This is the NBA.com article. No bias or spin on this. In fact, you would expect the opposite from the NBA, Correct. Who historically have not cared for the Sixers, that don't like Embiid, any of it.
Actively hate the Sixers, if you will.
Right. Joel Embiid took a stiff arm moments after tip-off, and the 7-footer pushed back. Trying to keep his composure, Embiid absorbed a few more deliberate blows from a Raptors defense, clearly trying to bully the big guy. That is the first paragraph.
Wow.
From the NBA.com article.
Bullying.
From, the Philly Voice.
Right.
This isn't from the Liberty Ballers. This is the NBA.com writer.
This is not the homie Kyle
Dan
Neubeck.
Gelston, an AP sports writer.
It's not Kyle Neubeck or Derek Bodner.
It's unbelievable. Embiid took foul after foul. He rubbed parts of his shoulder and elbows and shook off at least 1 foot injury and made 12 of 14 free throws. Sorry. Sorry to say.
Also, I loved the... Let me find it here. The NBA tweeted this out today, too. After a gut-wrenching playoff loss in Toronto 3 years ago, Joel Embiid returns hungrier than ever. Sixers-Raptors Game 3 tonight on NBA TV. I also love how Maxey has become the poster child for all of the branding and everything for the playoffs for the Sixers.
Yeah, it's interesting the series going back to Toronto now. Obviously, the first 2 games went very well for the Sixers. Looked good, too. I think that's what's impressive. Harden's creation has been fantastic. Haven't seen the scoring burst like we had hoped. Mm-hmm. and that could be an issue like in later series or even in this one, right? We'll see what happens tonight. But his creativity, his passing is amazing. One of the assist leaders for the playoffs as well. If it wasn't for a man named Chris Paul, he would be. Embiid, yeah, in the first game wasn't even amazing. In the second game, I wouldn't even say that was one of his most impressive performances. He was very good.
Matched his point total in the first quarter in game 2 that he had all of game 1.
Right. Well, it's because of all the free throws, Kyle. But
true. The Raptors won 87-86 without free throws, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, if you discounted all the things that make me unhappy, it's so stupid. It's frustrating too because like, we've had to contend with like Jokic stands for the last month, devaluing what Embiid does, and now you're having the same thing with like Toronto fans. It's like I just don't get it.
No,
I don't get the disdain too. You have two of the most double teamed players on the same team, Harden and Embiid. If you look at the NBA, the top 7 most double teamed players in the league, Harden and Embiid are in there. I think Harden's like the 2nd most double teamed player, and Embiid's the 6th or 7th. It's only natural that those guys are going to probably fight through those double teams and end up getting fouled because teams have to pay a ton of attention to them because they're both like mercurial players that can take over games. It's almost like one of them is an MVP candidate. One of them should have had 2 or 3 MVPs by this stage of his career. Like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you that you don't have any of the 3 best players in this series right now. That's it. But going back to Toronto is going to be tough. No Thibault. We'll see how that goes. Danny Green, I think,
fantastic.
Can fill in. He's played well against Toronto really all year, and he's looked pretty good so far this series. So you'd expect him to get a boost in minutes. Perhaps Korkmaz gets some look. Paul Reed has been playing. B-Ball Paul has entered the building. DeAndre Jordan has left, I guess. I don't know what's up with that, but long may it continue.
They locked him in his house.
God, I sure hope so. The Mavs can take him. If they want help to get past the Jazz, I'd be glad to like loan him out. But that's been shocking. I've actually been pleasantly surprised with. God, why am I saying this? Why am I saying this right before right before the game? But I've been pleasantly surprised with Doc and some of the decisions so far in this series.
That's not who I thought you were going to say either.
But this has been the thing though. The Sixers have made a habit of making the first series look good and thinking, wow, this team looks great, and then, filling their diaper in the second round. So that's where it's going to matter. But you expect going 2-up in a series that is a significant pull towards you, and Scotty Barnes might be back tonight. We'll see. It seems like a game-time decision, but knowing that the Raptors are a little bit hobbled still has to make it very much in the Sixers' favor. I wouldn't be surprised to see them drop one of these games in Toronto, though. It's especially Game 3 very often is like the game that teams drop. You get like a gentleman's sweep. It's usually something like that. I don't know that that'll be the case in this series. Gentleman's sweep. I mean, but wouldn't be surprised if it's coming back to Philly. Having lost one in Toronto.
Yeah, and when you said you've been pleasantly surprised by Doc, I've been pleasantly surprised by Tobias Harris lately.
Yeah.
He's been
all
very
the question
good.
marks. All the question marks have been good so far. It's 2 games, and it's been, let's be honest, against in game 2 a team that doesn't have great depth, that was missing functionally 2 players, and Thad Young was not really at his best. And Van Vliet has that like pinky thing, so they have built-in excuses, which I think is why they're deflecting so much about the free throws, rather than contend with the fact that hey. You get a very strong year. You get a great young player in Scotty Barnes. You have a lot to look forward to. Instead, it's like this mudslinging contest, which I just don't understand. I've never had an issue with Raptors before this, really. I mean, the Kawhi thing aside, of course, but even then, I was like, fair enough. Raptors I don't have any negative. It's not like the Celtics, where it's like kind of hate them, But even then, I've never felt or said the things that Raptors fans are saying about Embiid. I've never felt that, some of it has gotten downright bad. Some of the tweets about Embiid and what should be done to him. You would think he was part of the convoy in Ottawa. I don't get it. I don't get the vitriol for this guy, truly.
I just got the ESPN notification about Jay Wright. It's basically saying that he's retiring.
That's surprising.
the last sentence here says, the news of Wright's expected retirement was first reported by The Athletic.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Because isn't he Team USA now, too?
I think he is involved. I don't know that he was like the Coach K replacement, but I think he was.
It was Popovich, right?
Yeah. But I know that he was
Like on the
involved
staff.
in the organizational tree. That's surprising. I mean, fair enough though. Like I think as far as like retirement goes, especially for a lot of these guys, like I think like leave it early.
Yeah.
Why not? I didn't realize he was 60, honestly. I
Yeah.
thought he was early 50s. I mean, he looked great for his age. So, you know what?
2
Why not?
national titles,
You've,
another
like-
Final Four this year.
Like you've cemented yourself as one of the best coaches of all time, honestly.
Yeah.
Like you have an amazing resume, nothing left to prove. Fair enough. Right off to the sunset, man.
Yeah, arguably top 10 basketball coach of all time.
I mean,
Resume speaks for itself.
for winning more than one national championship alone, like
And
puts
as
you
put together as
Yeah.
it was, like championship off your championship.
Yeah.
And then a Final Four this year.
like amazing kind of run. So
He went on a San Francisco Giants-esque run. All even years.
why would you do that?
1 in 16, 1 in 18. There was no tournament.
And you know what's
in
crazy
20.
too? The Villanova too is like continually produced like good NBA players. Like you watch the playoffs and like everywhere you look, there's a Villanova player
Yeah.
playing well. Now, if it's Lowry or Bridges or Brunson, like
Remember when we were showing Jalen Brunson's high school mixtape?
yeah. DiVincenzo even is like a
champion.
important- Like it's
He won
just
a
like,
title last year. And apparently he wants out of Sacramento, so
well, come on.
come on home, brother.
Yeah, I wonder what Team Gillespie's going to find his way on.
Right.
It.
Everybody was saying, too, because Doug Edert from St. Peter's entered the transfer portal. This is obviously before the news tonight, but they said, oh, Jay Wright's going to turn him into the next great white NBA player.
It's true.
The next bit of news we're going to get into involves a team not currently playing, but they're getting ready for a draft, and it's going to be brought to you by our friends over at Trophy Smack. Upgrade your fantasy football game because this potential move could implicate a lot of things with fantasy football as well. They got the trophies, the belts, the rings, and they just introduced the new Smack Talk chains, very similar to the turnover chain that the University of Miami has. So you can go to trophysmack.com. Link is in the show notes of the podcast and in the description of the YouTube video. Help support us. Use our link at trophysmack.com to upgrade your fantasy Smack Talk. See this Deebo Samuel news today, Matt?
I did. Shocking. The NFL has taken notes from the NBA. I'll say that.
It has been a reality show offseason.
Off-season drama. Just like name a top wide receiver, and they've either already been traded or have deleted every inkling of their relation to
Watch
their
them switch up on you.
Yeah. The enemy speaks softly and carries a knife.
It's one of the best tweets of all time.
And it's so applicable
Oh
to
my
every
God.
wide receiver situation. But yeah, apparently doesn't want to be in San Francisco, which is surprising because, I mean, it's not like he's had an exceptionally long time there.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's a focal point of I mean, especially from this past year, was like the guy in that system, in that offense. And you'd have to think that'd be the case going forward. But I don't know where he ends up. That would be better for him. I don't know. Because he's so interesting, too, in that he's, I think, like part of this next generation of football player. And you're seeing this a lot with like quarterback, too, right? Where it's like, it's no longer good enough to be good at one thing. And you're seeing this really, I would say, all throughout sports. Like sports now is all about, okay, well, how versatile are you? Like you
Right.
can't be, there's no room, I would say, in most sports now for being a specialist. You have to be good at everything. And he has become not just the best wide receiver, but the best running back and can be used in multitude of ways. And I think is going to be the type of like athlete, the type of player that you see going forward. And it's the same for quarterback too. Like where you're going to see these guys now that can just run for 1,000 yards a season and also throw for 4,000. Like that's just it. That's just how it's going to go.
And from the reports today, it sounds like part of the reason he wants out is he's not in favor of how he's being used. So I don't know if that's like he's just tired of being used as a running back or whatever.
when you play that good, I don't know what.
Yeah, and then it's also boiling down to money and him wanting to get paid now rather than later. But I mean, from an Eagles perspective, if you're Howie Roseman, you got to at least make the phone call and be like, okay, what's it gonna take? Because
have a chat.
You put Deebo Samuel into this offense with Devontae Smith, with Dallas Goedert, and you give him Jalen Hurts. That seems like a recipe for a lot of success.
Hey, Dolphins, call him up. That would turn. If the Dolphins got him, that'd be like the most fantasy football to real NFL team come to life, I think, maybe ever. Yeah, I mean, for the Eagles though, it is I think a reasonable question to ask. I don't see him moving though. I think a lot of times in these situations, especially in the NFL, where like player movement and autonomy is not at all what it's. I said they were taking notes from the NBA. The NBA guy, if this was the NBA, I would believe it. I'd be like, well, it's gone. Like that's it. It just does. It really doesn't work that way in the NFL because the league, the owners, the front office has just way more leverage than the players do in these situations. You count in the non-guaranteed contracts and the franchise tag. Like, there's tons of ways that these guys. It's similar to baseball, right, where guys just get like puppeteered a little bit into being paid less money. So
weird teams being mentioned though, off the rip by Ian Rappaport about where the interest is coming from. Mentioned the Jets, the Packers, which definitely makes sense after they traded Devontae Adams. The Lions. Why on earth would Deebo Samuel want to go to the Lions is beyond me. And there was one more team too.
The Jets is interesting because they could conceivably in like 2 years be a very good team.
And they were in on Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
allegedly.
They have money, and I think they don't really have a wide receiver superstar that I could see that. I could see that being a very real interest, and that could actually like move somewhere. Eagles would be interesting too, though.
And they have the draft capital to do it.
Yeah.
Especially after that trade with the Saints that they made. That was.
And we know the 49ers, I'm sure, would like to recoup some draft capital because moved up to draft a quarterback that you played for like 7 snaps. So no, not as much on Jimmy Garoppolo either.
No.
That's gone a little quiet.
I don't know if that's going to come draft night.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. Draft only a week away, which is
snuck up on us.
Crazy to think about. But Deebo and Midnight Green would be fantastic, and I think Howie Roseman needs to do whatever it takes to potentially make that happen because that's the type of receiver that like elevates this offense to the next level, gives you like that true number one, and then Devontae Smith, a lot of pressure gets alleviated off of him. You put Quez Watkins in the slot, and now you have a legit looking offense. I think it's time, Matt.
Is it time?
Let's get into our Buffs and Snuffs Survivor Talk. It's brought to you by our pals over at Bino Board. You guys can go to binoboard.com. That's BINHOBOARD.com and use our code BINOUSP, BINHOUSP for 10% off your entire order at binoboard.com. The preview for this week's episode was absolutely magical. Mike and Omer bonding over just differences and learning from each other and potentially aligning with each other, which is great for my fantasy team because those are both of my players. But last week, Lydia gets voted out. They have Applebee's. The Hourglass is now 2 for 2, getting smashed, and we have merged.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because it felt like, all the discussion was about Tori. Got to get Tori out. And it just felt like she's going to win immunity, and she does. And then it turns to our sweet Jonathan, and I was so concerned. Thankfully not the case.
Yes.
But Lydia being voted out was a little surprising because High had almost gone to rocks for her.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know what exactly changed his mind. I think maybe he just understood that the tide was against him, and it was maybe just time to cut away from her.
Right.
But that was an interesting decision. Omer's great episode for him because he did discover, thankfully, before he went to Tribal that he didn't have a vote.
Yes.
But he used that knowledge to kind of like light a fire under his own ass to make sure that he did everything he could to keep him and his ally safe. Kept Jonathan in the game, because I think if he doesn't kind of do the little web weaving that he does, Jonathan maybe goes home on that vote, honestly. So really impressed with him and his ability to kind of turn the tides. You hope that doesn't make him like a bigger target, though, because that, people will talk and realize that Omer was at the heart of some of that vote. I've said this about Jonathan, too, though. Everyone is calling him their shield, and that could be dangerous for them, because that could be an easy path for Jonathan to like a final 5 situation, and from there it's like anyone can like get to the final tribal council at that point. Like it doesn't really matter. So do you really want to give someone that, from our account at least, seems like a very impressive player and could win the game? It just feels like when everyone is treating him like a shield, it feels like everyone's kind of like going at each other, not recognizing that, hey, you're leaving a very large threat in the game. But the hourglass stuff was interesting. Glad that's back.
We also found out why Roxroy wears his glasses.
Emotional discussion for him. I liked his perspective on, I think it'd be very easy if you get picked to be on exile in the situation that it puts you in to like be very upset or glum about that. And I liked his perspective shift on like, actually, you know what? This is beautiful. Probably not as great that he mentioned, I'm not here with my nagging wife. And he's probably watching this episode with his wife.
In the doghouse.
I kind of have to imagine that was a conversation he had to go a little delicate with. But good perspective from him. I like to get a little bit out of that. It's just, the twist is not great because it's so obvious to the person that they're going to smash it, because it gives them immunity.
Right.
Without that, I don't know that there'd be any reason really to shatter it. So it's a bad twist, I think, because it's very obvious the choice. And if that one qualifier, giving them immunity, wasn't there, it would also be a very obvious choice in the other direction. Why would you switch it up? Like, there's no benefit to you. In fact, it's probably only a net negative. Whereas now it's like, okay, well, you weren't there for the last 2 days. Would you like to be safe? Guaranteed? There you go. All you have to do is smash this.
Easy.
Like, and it worked out great for him, too, because Drea, one of his top allies, was essentially saved by that, right? Like, I don't know that she would have been voted off necessarily, but gave her, immunity. Yeah. And that solidifies their bond. And she's woven into like a very early, there's like an 8-person alliance that is formed. I have to imagine that melts away quickly. There's just no way that lasts.
It feels like there is like kind of like a making of a sub alliance too, where on the beach you have Mike and Jonathan bonding.
Yeah.
And then you have Mike and Omer bonding. It feels like those 3 could potentially come together and have, the strength aspect of things, and then Omer kind of being like a strategist from what we saw in last week's episode. Those 3 feel like they're starting to and then obviously from the 3 tribe split, you had Omer and Jonathan were pretty tight as well. So
and Jonathan and Lindsay as well. Like those really, and he seems to care a lot about Marianne. He was like upset when he's like, I had to vote for her. Whoever like gets in, I can't remember the original Orange Tribe's name at this point, but they all seem tight, and they all seem like willing to go with each other. That could be whoever taps into that. Maybe has himself a good way. I was impressed by Hai again. He's at the middle of all this. I just worry that maybe people are catching on to him being good.
It feels that way.
And I wouldn't be shocked to see in this episode if there's like some extra attention on Hai, personally. I feel like he's not as undercover as I would like him to be.
Yeah. Also, last week had that awesome moment with Romeo and Hai.
Yeah.
Romeo did tweet back at us on Twitter, which was cool. And that's been kind of the cool thing, like, since they've gone into the diversity initiative, having these different stories and different, walks of life come into the game. And then you have a lot of people like have similar, backgrounds and stuff like that, where they can bond over, things that they deal with back home. And it was really cool to see those 2 kind of bond together.
Yeah. I was talking about it with someone over the weekend, that I don't think it's a coincidence that this season and last season have had great casts, like great people, interesting people with interesting backgrounds and good at the game too, and enjoyable to watch on your television screen. I don't think it's a coincidence that those 2 seasons and casts have coincided with the new like diversity initiative. Like, I just don't think that's I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
I think too, like Survivor, at least recently, has moved away from like the like subtitle of the season. You know, like no one's being cast into an archetype.
Yeah,
it's not like healers versus hustlers versus heroes or like blue collar versus white collar. It's like these are just mostly normal people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like they're still, you still get your oddballs and you still get your like Ivy League corporate lawyers, whatever types, like, you know, like you still get some of those people, but for the most part, like, I don't know, I feel like I could walk into a bar and see any of these people, and I think that's what Survivor should always be, is like pretty representative of like the country, you know?
Yeah. Before we get into our 3 up, 3 down, I was watching a podcast that Chase Rice was on, obviously acclaimed Survivor runner-up, and he was talking about how like he wasn't even like trying to be on Survivor. He just got kind of picked. He was working for NASCAR at the time as like a pit guy, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to be on this show Survivor?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then he was like, "I'm not even really that good at the game." He was like, "You can go on Survivor and not be good at the game and make your way all the way through." He was like, "That's exactly what I did. I wasn't that good. I wasn't the He said I was in challenges that were for immunity his season. He was 0-6. Challenges for food, he was 6-0. It was just very entertaining and very funny stuff from Chase Rice.
And I think one of the most disliked seasons of all.
He was like, "There's so many people that tell me that I got robbed." He was like, "No, I shouldn't have even been that far." It was very, very funny.
Good humility, though. You know, fair enough. I would say being able to say that about yourself probably does actually make you a good Survivor player.
Yeah.
Because being a good Survivor player, I think ultimately boils down to is, do people like you?
Correct.
Like, the strategy is important, understanding that, and I think that's a fascinating. And you have to remember, too, that was, you know, 20-plus season.
I think he was.
Yeah, that was, I think Nicaragua was season 20.
Yeah.
Or thereabout. So things have changed since then, too, right? But, like, I think Survivor, certainly in the earlier seasons, too, but even still now, people have to like you to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you be a likable person? You listen. You have humility. You know, you can maybe have an interesting career or hobby, charming, nice, comforting, a good sport. Like
Chase Rice has done just that. He went from NASCAR to Survivor,
right,
to starting country music.
Yeah, he was like a handsome country boy.
Yeah, to then being on The Bachelor.
It was the young versus old season.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone on the young tribe was like, Chase, kind of cool dude. I don't know.
Then he goes on The Bachelor, and now he's just a country music superstar.
Yeah. So
what a life.
Yeah, real befuddling, Chase.
Let's get into our 3 up, 3 down heading into this week's episode. I mean, I think Jonathan still kind of firmly entrenched there until proven otherwise. For me, I think high is like there still, but like we both said, kind of tilting on kind of getting found out that he's really good at the game. And then for his move last week, I got to go Omer.
Yeah, I think I can't disagree with any of those, actually. Dre has been a mainstay for me, I think, in my top 3 a lot, but I think Omer's move and the fact that he's allied with Jonathan, that's a tough duo to break apart. And really High seems to be involved in that as well. So all 3 of them, I think, in the top for me. Hard. It's tough competition at the top, though, which is good.
Yeah. Who do you got in your bottom?
Bottom. Sorry, Rockstar, you had a beautiful moment last week, but can't say. I just don't see it. Rockstar, Chanel, and Marianne still, I think, unfortunately. I didn't think it was great that Jonathan was like, well, if we have to cut bait with Marianne, we can.
Yeah.
That's not a good place to find yourself. And Rockstar's only. I did think Rockstar like has shown times of like good self-awareness and like aware that people are like trying to play him and soothe his ego or whatever. So he's not like an idiot. I hope that's not the analysis the way it comes across. I just think that, like we just said, you have to be well liked, I think, in the end to win Survivor. I think that there are still people that find him a little abrasive. Maybe that has waned. I don't know. And we don't know how much of that is actually true or is just played up for the camera. You know, we have to remember everything we see out of them is like edited,
right?
Sometimes even out of context. But from what we've seen, I have to imagine most people are probably not voting for Roxroy to win. And Chanel, I think, is still, she's on the outs. I mean, the entire pretty much last episode is her walking up to a group of people and then saying, yeah, we go fishing. And, yeah, I'm going to follow you. Like, it was the worst.
So awkward. I think on the verge of the bottom three, just from what we saw from like the next time on Survivor, Romeo seems like he's trying to do too much too quickly and just trying to get people out, but not having a real calculated plan.
Carrying too many plates at once.
Yeah, and I think that could backfire a lot on him, especially because it doesn't seem like he's really firmly entrenched in any of like the core alliances whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
So we're going to go catch Survivor, but before we end this episode, going to announce our Nick Castellanos jersey winner. It is at IDK, my BFF Jamie on Twitter.
Great
Matt,
name.
I picked this one, scrolled through, and the Twitter banner I think you'll approve of.
It's a beautiful cat that actually looks a lot like my cat.
Yes.
So shout out to Jamie.
So Jamie,
shout out to Jamie and their wonderful looking cat.
I will we'll be sending you a DM from the Underground Sports Philadelphia account to get your info and get you your Nick Castellanos jersey. Thank you to everybody that entered. We had almost 400 people enter, which is one of our bigger giveaways of all time. I think the biggest was the Jimmy Butler jersey giveaway. That was our first like big spark, and then we had our...
That was one of the first breaking news
if
stories
not the
had.
first. We had that. We had, in his prime, DeMarcus Cousins going to the Warriors. Yeah. And just a number of news-breaking things, and today is the Jay Wright episode. But thank you guys to everybody who entered. There will be more giveaways in the future, especially as long as Nick Castellanos keeps hitting them to left field to make it a 4-0 ball game. Be sure to follow us on the socials at Underground PHI on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Check out the website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com, for all of our written content. Subscribe to the podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Really helps more and more people find the show, including a ton of people in Armenia, where we are still in the top 100 podcasts on the sports charts over there. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, click the like button, comment, your thoughts on the Phillies kind of up and down slow start, your feelings on Sixers and the Raptors, Deebo Samuel talk, and of course, if you're a Survivor fan, tap in. We'd love to hear from you as well and build our little core niche Survivor fandom that we have on this podcast when Survivor is in season. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just search Underground Sports Philadelphia on YouTube. Big thank you to our sponsors, Main Auto LLC, Ducharme's Pro Foot, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, Mark Ronchetti CPA LLC, and the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland. And of course, Tomahawk Shades. Use code USP at checkout for 25% off your order at tomahawkshades.com. Go to playpickup.com and play the NL East run differential props that we have up on Pickup's website, as well as a number of other headlines that you can play props on at playpickup.com. Kenwood Beer, go to kenwoodbeer.com and use the Kenny tracker to see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap in the Philadelphia area. You got to be 21 or older to do so, and of course, please drink responsibly. This has been Underground Sports Philadelphia, episode number 422. For Matt, I'm KB, and until next time, we are signing off. Peace.